Hey babes, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Brandy. I am the host of the Be Real Babe Show, a spinoff of the Be Real Babe podcast. And today, you guys, we are keeping up with Canada. If you're watching this as it launches, it is Monday. I hope you guys have had an amazing weekend. I definitely finally got some color red that's suiting in the back here from this weekend. It's super nice to get out in the sun and go out to the lake. And I hope you guys got to enjoy your weekend as well. So I have three different articles for you guys today, and we're going to kind of sandwich them in. So the first one is going to be an article I found just commenting on the Liberal government and how things are going there. And then in the middle, we're going to talk about the children that are missing in Nova Scotia, even though I said I wasn't going to talk about it. There is something that I do want to talk about that I think it's important that I bring everyone's attention to. And then I also am going to finish with another kind of political piece about the health minister and what she has to say about the opioid crisis and, more specifically about treatment and how we're going to help those with addiction. So if you're interested in listening to that, stick around and we'll jump right in. Okay, babes, as mentioned, three articles to go through today. So let's start with the first one. It caught my eye. It was just the title of it. And sometimes the titles do catch me to read a little bit deeper. And some of them I'm like, I just wish these wouldn't be the titles. Michael Taub, Early Signs, Liberal Government May Be Short-Lived. So of course that caught my attention. So let's jump into it. The 45th Canadian Parliament officially began on May 26th. There are already some early signs that it may not last very long. Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberals suffered an embarrassing defeat in a June 2nd vote in the House of Commons. Conservative interim leader Andrew Scheer's sub-amendment to the throne speech, which called for a firm commitment to present a spring economic statement or budget that incorporates measures aimed at unleashing Canada's economic potential, passed by a vote of 166 to 164. So just by 2 votes. And keep in mind that the Liberal government hasn't been really working since December. Just keep that in mind. It's May. Allegedly, they're working for a couple weeks and then shutting down for a little bit longer, from what I hear, allegedly. So let's see how that happens. But like I've said many times before, I wish that the focus would be getting back to how we're going to get Canada in a safe place and as less of a divided place. I'm not sure I know the answer, but I'm not in politics and I'm not getting paid to do those things. But I also think it's crazy that you guys haven't worked that much and the country is where it is and we haven't decided to work just a little bit of overtime. I don't know about you guys, but I work for a company that when we all have a goal to meet and we need to do things, we all work together to get to that goal. Sometimes some of us put in OT. Just a weird thought. I know, crazy that we would think the government would do that. This surprising result was aided by the fact that 4 Liberal MPs didn't vote due to the long-standing procedural measure of paired abstentions. This is when the parties represented in the House agree to have an MP sit out a vote and be paired with an MP of a different party who can't attend for a particular reason. In fairness, this was a non-binding vote. Confidence in the Liberal government wasn't being put to the test that day. At the same time, in spite of Mark Gerritsen suggesting we knew the outcome of what that vote was going to be, it's still a humiliating moment. While there have been a tiny number of instances of a federal government losing a non-binding vote, resolution, or motion, it's highly unusual to have it happen this early in Parliament's life, to have it linked to the throne speech. As it happens, Carney and the Liberals survived a second crisis with the throne speech the following day when it was adopted by the House of Commons in a peculiar fashion. Political commentators and columnists were briefly caught off guard on June 4th when the NDP announced they would vote against the throne speech. The Conservatives seemed to be a good bet to join them. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet even told the media that we have no news about how the caucus is going to vote. This had suddenly become an interesting situation. The minority Liberal government has 169 MPs. One of them, Francis Scarpellegia, is Speaker of the House. Only Green Party leader Elizabeth May appeared to be on side with the Liberals. If the Conservative NDP and Bloc Québécois all voted against the throne speech, this would have been regarded as a vote of non-confidence in Carney's Liberal government. This would have likely led to the dissolution of Parliament and a new federal election. And to be honest, you guys, as disappointed as I am with the federal election, me just personally, can we just get on with it? Can we just get back to work? Can we just continue the next 4 years until the next election, please? I'm just so tired of nothing happening. Even if I wasn't stoked on the And a lot of people say it's rigged. Everyone's allowed to think what they think, but at the end of the day, it's just like we need to move forward. And it just doesn't feel like we're ever going to move forward. We just keep looping in this. And I just personally want to move forward. Let's get these 4 years done. At least it's not Trudeau. At least there's 11 less MPs. I'm not saying he's great. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to be positive and see the silver lining. And I just feel like some of this is such waste, but let's continue on. The whole scenario seemed rather far-fetched. Going back to the polls so early wouldn't be desirable for most Canadians. The voters would blame one or more of the parties for causing this situation. Meanwhile, Elections Canada revealed that the estimated cost for running this year's federal election was $570 million. It would have been difficult to convince the Canadian taxpayers who foot this lofty bill that they will need to spend this amount or more once again in 2025, with no guarantee that it would lead to a different result. Exactly. I feel that the Bloc Québécois would ultimately side with the Liberals, as I wrote on X. That being said, I acknowledge that there's a real possibility that they'll vote them down. It was difficult to figure out what exactly was going on at that point in time. No one would have ever guessed this political crisis of sorts would end, however. The throne speech was ultimately adopted on division. What does this mean? In a nutshell, some MPs wanted their displeasure or opposition to be put on the record in Hansard, but they didn't want to go through the process of a recorded vote. While this is an acceptable procedural maneuver, it left a bad taste in people's mouths. There's also been no indication which opposition parties or politicians supported the government's reply to the throne speech. It may take us a while to figure out their identities, or we may never find out at all. Meanwhile, some political observers were surprised the Liberals found themselves in this situation to begin with. They shouldn't be, though. And despite the fact that Carney's minority government is substantially larger than the other two minority governments of his predecessor, Justin Trudeau, he's actually in more of a precarious position. Why? There's only a 25-seat difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives, which could potentially decrease with by-elections and floor crossers. The NDP have 7 seats, no official status party, and barely a political pulse. The Bloc Québécois slipped down to 22 seats and doesn't have the trust of a federalist party like the Liberals. The sole Green Party representative is May, which isn't enough for Carney to ensure his legislation will get passed and avoid future votes of non-confidence. Long story short, a larger minority government doesn't necessarily ensure or guarantee political stability on Parliament Hill. Carney's early political hurdles suggest he's likely going to face some real difficulties in the fall session in gaining support and unity with important pieces of legislation. This can only continue for so long before the opposition parties get fed up with the Liberals and bring them down. We could potentially be looking at a short-lived minority government that's defeated much earlier than originally expected. Originally, this is out of the National Post, but you have to pay. So again, like, obviously, I would have preferred Conservatives be in the government. That was what I voted for, but I'm also... It is what it is, and I'm not going to sit here and ruin my life and be in fits about it. I'm going to hope that he is going to do what's best for the country and things move forward. And to be honest, this back and forth stuff, it takes up a lot of time when it doesn't seem like there's much time to be had, and we need more things to be focused on. Like, I guess myself personally, I'm just tired of hearing like, oh, the government's in turmoil and they're not making any plans. But meanwhile, they're spending billions of dollars and no one's talking about it, and it's kind of insane that and then they're going to be shut down in a couple weeks, and then what? What if all these things come at us? Well, like, do government ever go back? Like, I'm asking, I don't know. Do government ever go back? Like, what causes government to go back to work? Like, I'm not saying we have war on our hands, but it doesn't sound like tariffs are still doing stuff to people. Like, vehicles are still costing more. Sounds like we're going to hit a second recession. What I read earlier is what TD Bank, I believe, was saying, their economist, is that there's going to be another $100,000 job losses. So, like, why are we not working to, like, counteract that or see what we can do as a federal government? But instead, some people are putting their energy towards this. Like, I understand where we're coming from. It's shitty and we're all tired of it. At the same time, like, are we wasting a ton of money? That's a lot of fucking money. What was that? $570 billion was, and like, on top of that too, like, I don't necessarily really trust Elections Canada. I don't trust them either. And we paid them $570 million, and there's all these weird things that were happening, and Canadians don't feel secure. Another branch of something in the government that people don't feel good with. Like, what are we doing here? But anyways, what do you guys think about that? How are you feeling that the Liberal government is doing so far? Are you guys happy with your vote? If you voted for them, what do you think? What's been going on so far? What's been going on in your head? We've got our first week in. What do you guys feel, Canadians? Like I said, I'm just always going to remain hopeful. That's just how I am. At the same time, I'm going to remain super skeptical, but you let me know. So next story, and I briefly touched on this in one of my past episodes because I just wanted to share the kids' pictures early on in the missing child's investigation for the 2 kids that are missing in Nova Scotia, but there was a lot of speculation going online that really wasn't helping. It wasn't moving the story forward. I do feel like there's a lot of people that were jumping in on this trying to get views and clicks and really having misleading information. So I just really wanted to make sure that I stayed away from that. However, it's been over a month and there is now some signs of scamming going on for this, and that's what I really wanted to bring up. Not necessarily have any speculation or opinion on what's going on, other than this is tragic, and I of course want to see them found, but I'm not going to speculate on who I think did it or who's guilty or whatever. But I do want to bring a warning here because I thought this article was really important and I wanted to bring it to you guys. So Search Group warns against fake fundraisers exploiting 2 children missing in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia search and rescue organizers are warning the public about fundraisers claiming they'll use donated cash to search for the 2 missing children. Paul Service, director of Halifax Search and Rescue, said in an interview Thursday that one GoFundMe campaign attempted to raise $100,000 to fund a drone to search for 4-year-old Jack Sullivan and 6-year-old Lily Sullivan. The campaign stated any unused funds will go to Halifax Search and Rescue or other active missing children searches. Service said the nonprofit volunteer group didn't authorize that statement, doesn't normally request donations through GoFundMe, and doesn't base its fundraising campaigns on particular searches. We would never tie in a fundraising effort to a specific search, he said. A large-scale search was launched for the 2 children after they disappeared on May 2nd in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia, and there have been two smaller efforts since then involving volunteer searches. To date, there have been no signs of the children despite hundreds of ground search and rescue teams combing through the densely wooded area. The teams also used helicopters, drones, and thermal imaging technologies. On Tuesday, the volunteer group put out a warning on Facebook and other social media about fraudulent individuals and organizations impersonating us and soliciting money for searches. Service said a representative from GoFundMe contacted him to say it was taking down the site and investigating after the campaign was reported on CBC. He said that it is disheartening for his group to have to cope with scams since it may discourage the public from donating to his group's legitimate fundraising efforts. It's discouraging from a point of view because there are search and rescue groups in Nova Scotia and they all could use donations to help keep their teams going and to help buy additional equipment, he said. These false fundraising campaigns challenge the illegitimacy of all the other fundraisers that help the teams are doing and the good work those teams do. Service said his group is hearing reports of some people receiving telephone calls soliciting funds to help the search for the children. On May 31st, Pictou County Volunteer Search and Rescue posted warnings telling its supporters it doesn't use telemarketing to seek donations. We had someone reach out saying that they have been approached to give their credit card over the phone to donate and help save the children, the organization warned in an online posting. Service said for people who want to donate to his organization, the safest way is to contact us directly. He said that the group receives close to $110,000 from municipality and fundraisers and seeks donations for about $40,000 to help meet an annual budget. Between April 1st and June 4th, we contributed over 4,000 hours of volunteer time responding to incidents, adding this season has been among the busiest on record for search and rescue group efforts in Halifax County. The GoFundMe told the Canadian press in statements that anyone can report a fundraising at any time if they have concerns. When suspicious activity is flagged, whether through our tools, our community, or simply because a fundraiser starts gaining momentum, our dedicated experts will immediately investigate to verify its legitimacy. GoFundMe wrote in a statement, "We have zero tolerance for misuse of our platform." So this is reported on June 5th, 2025. So again, just a high-level details. Like I said, from what I understand, the children were last seen May 1st. It has been confirmed on video. And then as of May 2nd, no one has seen them. Like I said, there's a lot out there going around. I am personally not going to speculate. I just think it's in poor favor. And everyone can do what they want. Like, there's channels that report on this kind of stuff. I just like to bring things to the awareness. And like I said, I really wanted to point out that just be careful. And I've said this several times on the show, when you are donating to causes, like try to, as much as these platforms can be great because you can get money to strangers, there also can be a lot more opportunity for people to scam. So sometimes I like to get the direct email of the person, email transfer at the same time to those platforms. And, fair enough, they're having a service, we'll take a cut as well. So if there's a way to email transfer the money to the person directly, or if I can give them cash, or if I know them, I feel like that's the best option. They get the full amount, but just be aware that, like this said here, there'll be actual proper fundraising through the search and rescue teams, not through random panels on GoFundMe, telemarketing, calling for that. So just be very cautious. And I would also say too, like if you do get a call like that, ask them to call back. That's one thing through all of my hacking that I've learned that they've said to do, is that if a company calls you and you feel like it's odd, get their number, get their extension, and ask to call back. And then that way, when you call, you'll know that the number is going to the right company if it actually pops up with the right company. If you're getting just someone picking up the phone right away, just one way to try and beware. So it is something you're not sure, just ask if you can call back at another time and what their extension is, and kind of go from there, and that will kind of help. But I always like to do the more personal one. So just be aware. And of course, as always, please keep Jack and Lily in your mind and praying that there's some answers. Unfortunately, regardless of what the answers may be, I think everyone is just praying for some answers. And thank you to all the people that have helped, all the search and rescue, all the people that do try to donate. I know where your heart is going. So just be careful and make sure you're donating to the right ones, because then unfortunately, if scammers are making money off this, they'll continue doing it. But if we can just pick out the signs early on and shut them down earlier on, eventually it's not going to be their money pit anymore, their money well. So they'll just hopefully go away is my hope. But I doubt it. Just be aware and keep your eyes out and prayers up for those children. Okay, so third and final article I want to bring to you guys today, and I'm going to go deeper into an area in Victoria that is really struggling right now with the fentanyl crisis and what they're trying to do. It's kind of like a beautiful church, but it is a longer article. It deserves more of a deep dive, so I'm going to jump into that a little bit more next week. But as I was searching, I also found this article as well from the health minister, and I just thought I'd bring this one to you guys as well. So this is from Global News. Health minister won't intervene on forcing addictions treatment. So this is of June 3rd. Federal Health Minister Marjorie Michael says there's no evidence that forcing people into addictions treatment works, but she won't weigh in on whether provinces should pursue involuntary treatment. I will tell you that I think every single Canadian has the right to get treated, she said. I won't tell you that to force them to be treated is a way to solve the problem. I don't think for now we would have any kind of scientific evidence on this practice. Alberta has introduced sweeping legislation to allow family members, healthcare workers, or police to apply to have someone ordered into treatment for addiction. Under that legislation, people using substances who are thought to pose a risk to themselves or others could be forced into a secure treatment facility for up to 3 months. In British Columbia, where the opioid crisis has been particularly deadly, the provincial government recently opened a 10-unit facility at a pre-trial center to treat people at the jail who have both serious brain injuries and addiction issues. The government also wants to add more facilities at jails across the province. BC officials said they are trying to provide help to people who are unable to ask for help and prevent them from spending time in segregation as they wait for a bed to open up, which I don't know the answer here, guys, and I'm never going to say that I know the answer, but I do know whatever's going on is not helping as things have progressively got worse, and I don't think forcing anybody is great, but I do think if we're going to look at jail versus rehab, I think rehab is a great option, because if you're going to jail, I don't think that you're going to have the support services, possibly, I don't know, I've never been to either, that you would have at a detox facility or, somewhere to get clean. I don't know, but I would imagine that would be a better environment to come down than strictly jail, but I could be wrong. And BC always feels like we're somehow the testing ground for everything when it comes to these type of quote unquote like experiments and how they're doing with things. And I don't know if they're doing this to course correct from the decriminalization of all the harsh drugs and all that hill that we went on there. I'm not sure, but interested to find out. So let's carry on. Ontario announced last month that it plans to study how it can introduce involuntary treatment to the correctional system and plans to hear from people with lived experience and experts. The Ontario government has said it's looking to BC as a potential model. Of course it is. The proposed changes have been opposed by advocates who say government should focus instead on expanding access to voluntary treatment. Michael said that she won't comment on the province's plans for now. I will sit down and see results because I think we need to work closely together, but mostly we need scientific evidence, she said in an interview outside of the House of Commons. A 2023 review published in the Canadian Journal of Addictions found there was a lack of high quality evidence to support or refute involuntary treatment for substance use disorder. The study concluded that more research is needed. And this is kind of where I completely agree with her in that we don't know yet. We don't know if it's going to work. And I also agree with the fact that just treatment isn't everything. And it's same with talk therapy. So many people are like, go to therapy, go to therapy, go to therapy. But sometimes therapy and talk therapy doesn't work for somebody. There's lots of different therapies that work for certain people. So you really have to have a whole holistic way. And you for sure have to have an environment that you're going to be able to feel safe in. If you go to talk therapy, but your environment at home is completely chaos, I mean, you can talk yourself to death, but that's not going to change the situation. I'm not saying you have to, but you know what I'm saying? So like, I understand that. I agree that you can't just think that addictions therapy is just going to fix everything, or going to detox is just going to fix them. Like there's more to that. And that's where I think that rehab, detox, all those types of things being coached through and then integrated back into society, I think is the piece maybe that's missing. Is like, I agree, like you take those tools away, it's, of course it's going to be harder, but it's not impossible. And forcing them into it, just like we know most people being forced into something, they will rebel. So I get that as well. But continuing to let them live in live addiction when it's just progressively gotten worse, the crisis hasn't gotten better, the hospitalizations haven't gotten better, deaths haven't gotten better. Not from what I see. So please share the information if you've seen otherwise. So I get that the science maybe isn't here yet for this, but it's showing for the other side that it's not great either, right? So do we continue trying with the same model, or do we try and at least take, 15 to 20% on this path and see if that works? Who knows? But I think it's worth trying. People's lives are worth trying, not just being like, well, treatment's not going to be the only thing, so let's not try it at all. Let's just let them just safely inject. Safe supply hasn't stopped people from injecting. In fact, there's arguments to be said that it's made some things worse because they get their Dilaudis and whatever, the Dillies or whatever they're called down the streets, all those things, and they sell them, and then they go get harsher drugs. So where's that part in the conversation, right? The Center for Addiction and Mental Health in British Columbia said evidence shows that forcing people into treatment actually increases the risk that they will die of drug poisoning after being released. Cora Debeck, a professor of substance use and drug policy at Simon Fraser University School of Public Policy, said that one of the reasons involuntary treatment is considered a high risk. I think there's really a magical thinking about addiction treatment, and this thinking is that we can just get people into treatment, the suffering will go away, and people will get better, she said. Debeck said that addiction is a chronic, relapsing condition and people need supports around them to get better. I am really disappointed that so many governments seem to be moving away from public health-oriented approach to substance use and drug policy, she said, arguing that harm reduction policies have not failed. I'm sorry, girl, I know you're a professor, but in my dumb and uneducated opinion, so that's fine. I'm not anybody of an importance here. This is just my opinion from the outside. Doesn't look like it's gotten better with your guys' policies. But I digress. She said that the combined effects of the opioid crisis, the housing crisis, have created a horrible situation that has people calling on their government to do something different. More than 50,000 people died of opioid toxicity in Canada between 2016 and 2024. The supply of drugs is so toxic, it's so contaminated, and so what we're seeing very viscerally on the street is a level of suffering that we just haven't seen before. In a statement, the president and CEO of the Center of Addictions and Mental Health said that before they introduce involuntary treatment policies, governments should do a comprehensive review of the voluntary system. Many people want help but are unable to access timely, high-quality voluntary care, says Sarah Downey. The statement also said long-standing gaps in mental health and addictions care must be addressed and called for bold collaborative leadership from the federal government. In the federal election platform, the Liberals promised to add $500 million to the Emergency Treatment Fund to address overdose crisis and invest in deeply affordable housing, supporting housing and shelters as a means of improving health care. Michael was elected on April 28th in Papineau, the riding that had been represented by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for 17 years. She is a first-time cabinet minister, but she is no stranger to Parliament Hill. She served as Trudeau's Deputy Chief of Staff since 2021, and before that served as Chief of Staff for 2 cabinet ministers. She said she understands the criticism of Prime Minister Mark Carney's decision not to name a minister of mental health and addictions, a role that existed in Trudeau's government. But you have a mental health minister because I can tell you I am the health minister, and the mental health minister, she said, adding that mental health will be one of her top priorities. She pointed out that Carney has talked about his desire to boost Canada's productivity rate and said making improvements to mental health care is part of the solution. If you're not taking care of health and mental health, you won't get it, but because people will get sick. Okay, so that's interesting. So she's been in the Trudeau government for a little bit and then now over here, I guess it sounds like, but first-time cabinet member. So we'll be interested to see. I agree that there shouldn't be as many people, but when it comes to how bad our healthcare is, maybe that should have been perhaps a split. And yeah, I would like to be curious. I'd like to dive a little bit more in her understandings. Perhaps she can come to Kelowna. Perhaps she can go to Victoria in some of the places and see there the policies that are working. I agree that it's not just the drug crisis, housing crisis, affordability, all of those things. Those are all in control of all the other governments. So why aren't we working together to make things more affordable, and really put money back to our people? That's just my thoughts. But again, non-government, just a fucking mouthy Canadian, stoner Canadian here, just curious. But going to sit back and see, because this was something that I brought up that I did not like about the way that Mark Carney was going to be handling the opioid crisis that he doesn't think exists. He does not think it's that big of a deal, as bad as America has it, but it is just as bad, I'm sorry, if not worse, because we shouldn't be this way. We have quote unquote free healthcare. So why isn't our free healthcare helping in the ways? Why are you guys talking about doing this now when you've been in power for the last 9 to 10 years is my question. You can't blame the Conservatives for getting things this way. You can't blame anybody else. It's your parties. Same people, you were there in 2021, and it has not gotten better in the last 5 years. Who are you going to blame it on? Trump? Tariffs? Like, what is it? I'm just curious. Can't blame it on the pandemic anymore. Is it still post-COVID? Is this a post-COVID symptom? I'm just curious. So interesting. Just remember, guys, to keep an open mind. Try to be positive. I know politics can be, it does feel like it's a little bit lighter, and that's why I agree. I don't want to go back into a federal election. I just want this government to get to work. I want people to be in the House and Commons. I want stuff to be talked about. I want transparency. I want to know where our money's going, where our tax is going, what our budget seems to be, what they think that they're spending money on, instead of all this silence and not working. That's what I personally want. I don't really want an election, and I agree, though, if things go the way they go, I don't imagine it's going to be minority government for either long, because they'll push it over into a majority, or it'll stay minority, and we will end up voting again in a couple years. I'd also like to know why it costs $570 million. Is that something that we can all just maybe like go online onto a Teams meeting and record, I vote for this, and then just log it that way or something? I feel like there's probably got to be better ways, but anyways, I digress. I hope you guys are enjoying the beginning of your summer. If you're listening here in Canada, if you're in Kelowna, it's been really nice. The summer has kicked in. I'm so excited. As you guys see, I have complete lake hair today, because I know I'm just going to go back out there today. So for the next month, expect to see me in complete disarray from the beach and the lake. But like I said, we've got 4 more weeks here, and then I'm going to take a break for the month of July. Just going to take some time off. The podcast will still be running because I record a month in advance, but YouTube will be taking a break for the month of July, and then YouTube's going to kick back up in August while I take a break on the podcast. So realistically, you're still going to be able to hear me every week year round, but the 2 months of summer is going to be a little less. Unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure. You guys let me know, but I really appreciate you if you've listened this far along. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, comment for engagement if you can, and I will see you next Monday. And don't forget, you can catch us on Wednesday for Internet Insanity. We will be going over week 3 of the Diddy trial, and thanks again so much. I'll see you in the next episode.